Much. I just want to mention that this year I'm a distinguished lecturer of the CIM, and they pay me to go around the country to give talks. And this year I only came from Union, so it cost you $3.25. So I hope you get your money's worth. You tell me. I'm on sale. Yeah. There's my cautionary statement. I've stolen these slides from a whole variety of sources. Some people in the audience, some from George, some from Larry Smith. And if people ask me, can I use your slides? And they say, sure, because I stole them from someone else. So there was an article on LinkedIn, it's a woman, Vanessa Versha, and she kind of summarized the way I look at the industry. You know, they, we, us think that just talking about the problem is enough. And you certainly see that. Just in a couple of months in Toronto, there's smart mining, there's mining IT, progressive mining, mining innovation, and other mining oxymorons like those. They think that technology alone will be the solution, and I'll give a few examples of that. But the third one is, to me, the most important one. What's the right mindset? Do we have the right mindset? And we heard a little bit about the people side today. Claudia mentioned it, and a couple of other people, but we don't really focus on that one. And what does that mean to me? So the question to you is, do you really have the culture in your organizations to move the industry forward? So, you know, what's culture? Culture is the way we do things when nobody's around to see what we're actually doing. So that's my question to you. Do you have one person like me that goes around and talks about innovation? Or if you go down to your mine site and you have a 60-year-old mine manager who hasn't had an original thought in 60 years, is that the culture? And who are the people following? Someone in Toronto or someone at the mine site? I like this quote, a company can only be as innovative as the collective capacity of the people who make up this ecosystem. There was an ad, I was going through Dorval, and I stopped everyone in line. I wanted to take this picture from HSBC, you know, artificial intelligence. And we'll hear about that. I think the next panel will be talking about that as well. Sometimes I get the audience to vote, and this is not an exhaustive list. These are just things I've put up. So, you know, which of these do you think will move the mining industry forward? And I think someone, maybe it was Kovir, mentioned one-ofism. So for each one of these, I can find a company that's trying it or testing it or talking about it. So it's not that they don't exist in the mining industry. It's not where I'm coming from. It's just, are these pervasive? So VR, AR, AI, and you can go down. And just by coincidence, there's only one of these, the last one, Lucky 13, that has anything really to do with people. The rest of them are technologies. By the way, that's my next idea here. I'm going to patent it. Dogs with GoPros. So they're gold-sniffing dogs. I'll have a GoPro on them. I'll sit in Toronto saying, go boy, and they'll go find the gold. But I was thinking of doing it underground, but I would need bats. But I couldn't find a GoPro anyways. So like I said, if you Google any one of these topics, any of these 13 topics, you will find something that, you know, would give the impression that, you know, the industry is innovative. And by the way, I had a problem with your opening statement. Either we have a different interpretation of innovation, or one of us is living on Mars, and I'm not sure which of the two it is. But so, you know, rising number of mining companies are embracing blockchain, digitalization of the mining, genomics and mining. Maybe Leslie will talk about that one. Microbes and mining, machine learning and AI. CIM had a whole issue on digital twins. Drones, the way they're changing the mining industry. So, you know, if everyone here was all negative about mining, I could spend an hour or 2 hours talking about all the great things I've seen in mining, because I have examples of every one of these things. So, you know, that's why I had it inconvenient truth, but innovation is more of a perception. So it's more like an innovation, or you know, what are your perceptions of the industry? How wearables, what will they mean for mining? Nanotechnology. So like I said, for all 13 of these, I'll find something. The Global Mining Standards Group, a unified vision of the future of mining is emerging. And, you know, here's projects. Every one of these I've been involved with. You know, flotation using solid bowling ball size instead of water and bubbles. Sensors on shovels, sensors on you know, conveyor belts, drones, of course. New flotation machines, hyperspectral core sampling, handheld lib analyzers. So you just go into the field, you get 30 elements at once instead of sending an assay, wait for 3 months. So these things exist. George had a Kudafani quote. Here's the one I like. Mining is not a good investment. We're 30 years behind. The rest of the world has moved on. So the part in gold there, to be brutally frank, our industry lags the petroleum, manufacturing, and aviation sectors and other more progressive and innovative heavy industries. And there's one from a CMIC paper from like 5 years ago, and it's exactly where we are today. Rather than trying to solve the problems in the traditional manner, it is time to take a fresh approach and look outside the industry. So, we all know this, but, have we really made great progress in the last, 5, 10 years? I think, again, it was Colville said, the least worst. So, this is from George Salamis. And, at least mining is not the worst. Agriculture is the worst. So I show this slide, and then people in agriculture send me videos and slides, and they say, no, we've got weed picking robots. We've got drones that go over the field. Raziel mentioned something like that. We have moisture sensors, which you can use in leach pads, by the way, to tell you when the field should be irrigated and when it shouldn't. So, who's using this in their leach pads? So they're trying to say, well, no, mining is worse than agriculture, but the point is we're kind of low on this scale. If you sell IT, you would be drooling at this slide here. You're saying, whatever we have to sell to the mining industry, they need. This, to me, is the scariest slide. We talked about millennials. Miranda, I think it was. If you look at this slide, your daughter is not going into mining. This is the millennials falling off the cliff. So when I started, I started in '87. My first job was at the Falcon Ridge Tech Center. 12%, and this has dropped off to 4% now. I don't know what's the cause, what's the effect. Is it not a sexy industry and we're not attracting the millennials? Or is it the technology that they're not interested in? And at the same time, we tell them, I go to universities and I say, we need creative people. We need people who are digital literate, like people like my son, he's 21. Data analytics, strong history in gaming, robotics, sensors, everything we've talked about and we'll be talking about. We tell them we need you, but they're shunning this industry. Honestly, if I also go to high schools, to elementary schools, and this is the perception. I'm not sure, how much Kool-Aid the people here have been drinking today, but this is the perception. And there's actually a new show called Gold Rush. So, there's a bunch of yahoos up in Alaska dredging through water, rivers, So either they get that impression or they think we're actually on mules and pickaxes. Barrick Gold didn't make 6 million ounces of gold on a mule and a pickaxe, but, or this nostalgic, panning for gold type of thing. And then you have, I don't know, you don't see a lot of people demonstrating in downtown Vancouver and, who want mining. It's like, without gold, I can live. Without water, I'll die. No to mining. So this is what people are saying. George had an Apple. I like this one. So, imagine if Apple, every time you turned it on, said, all the metal didn't come from mining, or mining stinks, or something like that. So Apple, no mining. They don't know when, and they don't know how, and they don't know if, but that's the vision. No more mining. This is true. If you Google the 20 worst jobs in the world, you'll get something like this. So you can tell your grandmother, I'm going to be a miner. And she says, no, can't you be a Portaloo toilet cleaner instead? We picked enough on Valley, so it's similar here. Hundreds of people dead and so forth. So we won't go on that. But you're building tailings dams. I have a list. I think I read it. Maybe even in Northern Mining, 18,000 tailings dams around the world. I have a list of 60 that have given way in the last 30 years. So every 6 months for the next 18,000 tailings dams, you're going to be seeing stuff like this. 10 years ago, it would have been hidden somewhere. Now within 5 minutes, it's on YouTube and Facebook, and everybody will see something like that. This is the phone. Somebody said driving their phone. I moved to Toronto about 10 years ago, and this was the phone I had. So technology is exploding on this exponential, super exponential way, And yet organizations tend to think about linearly or logarithmic. So eventually this gap gets big enough and something happens. And I'm waiting for that something in mining to happen. And like I said, there's all kind of things we could grasp onto, but this is what I'm waiting for. I started in '87. It took about 3 years, 5 years to get something into production. Now we're measuring things in the 3 decades. So by the time you discover something and the time you put into production, maybe you'll get it done in 30 years. I don't know about you, that's not a great investment. My son's investing in Litecoin. He can't afford Bitcoin. But when I show him something like that, he'll take his chances on Litecoin. Actually, Larry Smith, he's in the back. I stole that from you. Guy Desharnais showed this slide, but he stole it from you, and I stole it from him. So if you want this slide, talk to Larry. There you go. It's like, the year since discovery, you got like 100 years there, but that's an exception. You're in the 40s, and we're exploration 10, 20 years, study years. So you're in the decades now. We got to do better, and it's not a question of using AI and gold spotter and hyperspectral to find the stuff. If I flew a plane over New Caledonia or Cuba and I threw a shovel out that plane, I would hit nickel. That's not the problem. Gold's different. The game is trying to find it. But we got to do better on the permitting, the decision-making, the financing, and so forth. So yeah, exploration is part of it, but not the whole story. I know you all know this, but I tend to be more visual than most. So, this is the grades are declining, and this is gold. And, we were in the 50, 10, 5. Somebody mentioned 0.7. That's where we are now. And we're not on that flat part on the curve anymore. We're on this asymptotic part. So the amount of energy, the amount of water, the amount of earth moving is going up. Eventually, you're getting to the point where what made sense on the flat part of the curve is not making sense on the top part of the curve. And I think I borrowed that one or stole it from Doug Morrison. I said, staying still is moving backwards. So, what made sense in 1950, you're now approaching that zero. You better do something different or you're going to be moving like 0 meters per day. I calculated these odds. I thought this was interesting. So, about 1,000 to 1. The odds of betting $1 million on double green, and then if you won, betting it again on double green, those are better than these exploration results. And then you got to wait 30 years. Guy Desharnais had the same thing, 3,000 projects, 3 projects making it to the end of the pipeline, so, 1,000 to 1. Whatever numbers you like, you're in that range. So my questions to you, are we working on the right things? And are we asking the right questions? George had this one, so I added it to it. There's New York City 100 years ago, and then we got too many horses. You can see the calculation up there, and then we ended up with where we are now. So some people here think we're at the bottom, and let's play along with me. Let's say we're in the top corner, and someone comes to you and says, "I have a sensor, and I can tell how happy the horse is. I could tell when the horse is hungry." And I'll say, okay, I need one of those. Someone else has a Paytech puck. They can track all my horses. Someone else could have a drone. Someone else could have robots picking up horse poop. We can optimize this as much as we want. But let's say we're there, and the rest of the world has moved on. If you're in finance, you hate this quote. There's we talked about Harvard before, so I added this Harvard quote. Professor Clayton Christensen, he has some great YouTube videos. He believes that the pursuit of profit, as calculated by any ratio, IRR, cost benefit, whatever, is killing innovation. This type of fundamental thinking is wrong. Now, what does he actually mean by that? It's because when most people look at it, they're looking at the difference between A, the project you want to implement, and the baseline. But what we should be looking at is that C. If we do nothing, we fall further and further behind. So we should be looking at the difference from A to C. But when you do all these calculations, people only assume A to the baseline, and a lot of projects just don't get funded. If you're in the back of the room, you can't read this, but you can guess where I'm going. Which one do you think is the mining innovation dollar spent? And in fact, over the years, it's gotten lower and lower. And one of my previous bosses, who you mentioned before, he said something like, exploration is the R&D of the industry. No, it's actually not exploration. It's sort of sustaining. It's good to find more gold, but you really do have to put some money into new products like Paytech or what Shelby was showing before. And if the industry isn't, luckily other people are. But you could see we're quite low on the innovation scale here. So we're quite good at this continuous improvement and making changes. But eventually you get to the point. Actually, there's the Apple. Somebody mentioned Apple before. There's the first Apple I. It had no keyboard, no screen. If you were lucky, it played tic-tac-toe, and everybody, IBM laughed at this thing here. Like, why? Who would want this? I'm not sure if she's here. She asked, I put this in for her. Okay, I like this one here because, like I said, I'm visual. So this is how much earth you have to move to make a 1 ounce gold loonie-sized piece. Now, 1 gram per ton, it was actually 0.8. Strip ratio of 5 to 1, it was actually 8 to 1. And after all that, you recovered 65% of the gold. So 1/3 of all the gold that you ever found, crushed, moved, leached, is still sitting there somewhere. So this makes no sense to me, and I'm sure it makes no sense to anyone outside of this room, but it makes probably perfect sense to almost everyone inside this room. So I got to move 6 million grams of earth to make 1 gram of gold, and I'm recovering like 2/3 of that. Just makes no sense to me. By the way, gold is the most useless of all the metals. I now work for a nickel company, and I'm glad you had this panel. So nickel cobalt is the future. Gold is pretty useless. But I also worked for Rob McEwen, so I know his opinion on that. Okay, here's one of my inconvenient perceptions. I'll call it an inconvenience truth. There's a truck. The weight of the truck is about the same as the weight of the ore that it's moving. A diesel engine's about like 1/3 efficient. You have to have a slope design of about 6%. So that's why a truck will go around and around and around the pit for hours, and then has to go around and around the pit, empty, burning fuel, to get back to the bottom of the pit. I'm not sure that my daughter works for Dyson, so if I went to James Dyson and I said, hey, this is what mining's doing, I'm sure he'll say, like, no, you're joking. Who would design this? I found this interesting. If you take trucks and you put an AI module on it, it optimizes the path, and all the trucks follow each other. So if you have 20 trucks following exactly the same path for days and days, you get big ruts in the road, and then the axles break. But the people who designed that hadn't really thought of that. But if AI was so smart, it probably should have figured that out on its own. So now they have to add a little error where, like a human driver doesn't follow the same path, so you don't get this problem. So they put in a little error, so it kind of shifts itself a little bit. I thought I was the only one who thought this way, and then I saw this, there was something on LinkedIn. So we're trying to attract the millennials. We want the millennials. They're shunning the industry, and then BHP and all of their ads have big trucks. And this ad said, mining is marketed as dirty and dull. You think of BHP and its ads, and they're all about trucks and high-vis gears. So mining is all of that. So, there's something. Like I showed this one before. People who like trucks are 5-year-old kids, mining engineers. That's about it. I like this quote. In Sweden, if you ask a union leader, are you afraid of new technology? They'll say, no, I'm afraid of old technology. And I kind of think of a truck as old technology. So please stop asking about trucks. There's Torex's Muckahai. There's Railveyor that was developed by Inco, but now Agnico's taking it. Injection hoisting by Cementation, who I see was a sponsor. Pipelines, conveyor, new trans, ropeways, hovercraft, airships, dogs with GoPros. I don't care, but look at something. The point of the bottom one is, like, if you had only seen a bird fly, you would think that's the only way to fly. And the first people tried to mimic a pigeon. And, we've kind of moved on to that. So, where are we? If actually Leslie's here. I'm on the Lassonde advisory board, and they say, we ask them, the fourth-year students, every year come up with this great innovative design. And every year they come up with the exact same thing, a truck and a ball mill and a flotation cell. And they say, we don't understand why. It's, well, if you have 60-year-old professors teaching 40-year-old technology for 4 years, and then they come up with something that looks like a bird trying to fly, maybe open it up a little bit and tell them we really do want to be innovative. This one I stole from Robbie Standstill at VCI, and there's me pondering the future, by the way. So, where are we? He said, have a vision of the future. So I don't know what your visions of the future is. Mine's a dog with GoPro, but maybe you have some other one. So where are we? Truck enhancement. Yes, we could put a sensor on the tires and get 1% better tire wear. Yes, we could stick an electric battery instead of a diesel engine. Yeah, that's fine. We're on the short end here. Truck enhancements, follow the trucks with GPS. But if you look around it, we're going to laparoscopic mining. Just go for that 1 gram of gold and leave the other 5,999,999,000 behind instead of moving all that earth. So people are looking at it, in situ leaching, in situ recovery. You don't need to ventilate, you don't need to dewater, you don't need to haul, you don't need to hoist, you don't need to crush, you don't need to grind. Just go for the gold. I mean, they use it in uranium and they can use it in copper, and people have tested it in gold. I have no idea about other metals, but maybe start looking at it. Others peoples of the future is do pre-concentration underground. Just move the concentrate up, leave all that waste behind. And there are companies, Gecko, the Python system, that are looking at these. But there's more than one way to get your gold out or whatever metal you want. I don't want to steal Leslie's thunder, so I won't go into this one in great detail. This shows where we've moved, the pendulum, where it's moved in the time I've been in the industry. Someone once told me, don't say you've been in the industry 30 years, because that just makes you sound old. Stop at 20, 20 plus. Nathan has 20 plus years, and then that's a good number. Anyway, so I started in '87, and every major company, I started at the Falconbridge Tech Center, Noranda had a tech center, Placer Dome had one, which was bought by Barrick, and now was just shut down, because someone decided they'd rather have the tens of millions of dollars of land in downtown Vancouver than the billion of NPV that it generated by developing Pueblo Viejo, Alcan Research Center. All these are shut down. So we were forced to go from in-house to all the way to the crowdsourcing and consortia and so forth. And there's all kind of examples in between, not necessarily mining. And I know Leslie's going to be talking about that, so I just got to set her up. So nobody wants to be that first penguin, jumping off the cliff, because there could be a whale underneath. Who knows what's in the water? Everybody wants to be the second, third, fourth penguins. And I hear this all the time, like everybody wants to be first to be second. So, take the risk, be that first penguin. Maybe there's no whale there. So I'll leave you with this, one of my favorite quotes. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Yes, there's me standing next to a big truck. This was at the Caterpillar Truck Museum, where I think the big trucks belong. Thank you.